Hi everyone, Dom Famularo here. I am back. This is fantastic that Vater allows me to have this time, Vater Percussion, globally to reach you, whether it's through Facebook or YouTube channel, to have this opportunity to feature so many great drummers and percussionists. This has been so exciting. And today, like any other time, this is absolutely fantastic. This phenomenal player that we have to feature today. She is so creative. She plays multi-instruments. She sings. We're going to step into her world, and I want to make sure that you understand who this is. This is going to be Jordan West. Check out some of these pictures as I'm speaking here. She's a multi-instrumentalist. I mean, I'm talking incredible. Singer, songwriter, drums. Jordan does absolutely everything. I want to dig into her musical journey so far and what's gotten her into playing drums, her jazz background, her playing rock soul with Grace Potter, and her upcoming clinic at the Percussive Arts Society PASIC Convention 2021. There's so much more, and you can see with all the electronic that she has and all these different looping. This is incredible. And I want to play for you first this incredible video. Check this out of Jordan West.
Hey, I came to play. Didn't know I would risk it all just to play a game. There's hope in the rain, blood in the water. Can't seem to find a place in the rhythm. I'm falling away. Take who I am, make me forget it. Think about everything I'm not getting now. I'm not the same.
Oh, this is so fantastic. What a groove, what a feel, what a voice. Would you all please welcome Jordan West?
Hello.
Hi, Jordan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
That is so great. Your feel and how you're in the pocket. Your drumming is fantastic. You're singing on top of that. I want to kind of get into all of this here as how you were able to develop this incredible career that you have going on. So let's just start from the beginning days of you starting to play the drums. I think you got your first kit at like 12?
Yeah. Yep. I got my first drum set at 12. I played the French horn first when I was like 9. That was my first choice for some, I don't know why. But then I quickly kind of shifted to drums because they were way more fun. And I started on drum set. So that was kind of unique. I felt like it just made sense to me. And so I played that for a couple years. And then my parents on Christmas, they got me like one of those plastic drum sets at like Walmart that's like this big. And they put it under the stocking. And I was so upset because I was like, no, I've been asking for a drum set. And then I went into the dining room and they had it all. The real Ludwig kit like set up, and it was great. And I couldn't touch the pedals, but it was awesome.
How fantastic. What do you think attracted you to drums? What was it with the drums that brought you in there?
I think I just was super like hyperactive, and I was always kind of all over the place, and I loved sports and being very physical. So I feel like the drums kind of just were a natural outlet. And also I like couldn't play like brass really. I could play the French horn weirdly, but like trumpet or flute, like any orchestral instrument just wasn't working for me. And piano, I had no patience for. So drums were like, just, I don't know, they just felt right.
But with French horn, you were already reading music, so you were already stepping into theory a little bit, right?
Kind of, but weirdly enough, I learned that in 3rd grade. I learned like the basic notes for French horn, and then I never read music again till I was in college. So I actually I like had forgotten how to read music and had to relearn when I was like 23. And I never knew anything about theory until the same time when I was like maybe 21 in college, and just was like, I should know what I'm doing.
You absorbed it pretty quickly and pretty fast in the process. So what were the influencing forces that you were listening to? What drummers and what music? Let's start with just what general music were you listening to?
Well, the teacher that I started with when I was about 12, he's also a singer and a drummer, and he loves like Bill Withers, Sly and the Family Stone, James Brown. So I was listening to Clyde Stubblefield, a lot of Clyde Stubblefield, and like Steve Jordan, like the modern kind of pocket drummers. And so that was sort of what I was into. And then as we went on, we listened to like Asia, and I got introduced to people like Steve Gadd and Jeff Porcaro. So it was kind of this mix of groove and like jam bands and sort of jazz. And all the while he was teaching me these like cool cool, musicians. And then in school it was a very heavy jazz program. So I was listening to like Joe Morello and Tony Williams and all like Gene Krupa, who I in that video clip I call myself a low rent Gene Krupa. But so I kind of had like a crazy mix of jazz and soul and R&B and funk all just coming at me at the same time, and I loved all of it. I don't have a favorite genre really.
Well, how great. Well, that song that you just played that we heard in the opening clip, that really was kind of like a Gene Krupa sing, 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 tom, tom feel, which is just, it's just like so primal in how it reaches people, where if you're not moving during that kind of a feel, you're freaking dead. It really is. You gotta bounce and move down there. So it really was a great compliment to Gene. I had the chance of talking to Gene on the phone.
Oh, wow.
I was taking actually lessons with Joe Morello.
Oh,
and
he's so good.
What a beautiful guy he was, and what a great player, as you say. And Gene had called up to speak to Joe one day, and I grabbed on the phone and talked to him for a second. But I mean, these players that you're talking about, the Steve Gadds, and of course, Jeff Porcaro, another dear friend of mine, rest his soul. These are phenomenal players who really kind of balanced a groove with, really ample control over the instrument and great technique.
Yes.
And they found the balance of it. So it sounds like you kind of got both of that you studied the technical aspect of what was happening, but you maintained that groove and that feel.
Yeah, I think like, especially with like Joe Morello and Steve Gadd, and like, I mean, those are probably my two kind of favorite people. And I feel like they're very musical, and they're very phrase oriented, and you can always hear the song that they're playing, even if there's nothing else going on, and I just loved that aspect of people like them. And so I feel like that's what I try to do. And, that's what inspires me a lot.
Well, good for you. Just a real quick aside. I asked Joe Morello one day what his favorite album was with the Dave Brubeck Quartet. And there was a 2-record set called Live at Carnegie Hall. Dave Brubeck, Live at Carnegie Hall. If you get a chance to track that down, that was Morello's favorite. He played absolutely brilliant on it. And it was a live show at Carnegie Hall, which the newspapers were on strike. But yet, even though the newspapers were on strike, they still sold out Carnegie Hall for Dave Brubeck Quartet. At the time, the newspaper was the only way to advertise. So word of mouth kind of filled the Carnegie Hall up. And that was one of Joe's favorite albums. So if you get a chance.
That's awesome.
Live at Carnegie Hall. So now you're hearing these players. So, and you were taking lessons privately. So what were you doing in the private lessons?
Yeah, private lessons, it was all groove oriented. So it was all like Clyde Stubblefield. Like we spent so much time on like Zigaboo, Modest, and Stanton Moore, and kind of breaking down like linear grooves and kind of going back to the roots of them, whether it was Latin or New Orleans or jazz, like kind of dissecting their influences and seeing what made, like, I remember I did a transcription of Actual Proof, and I only got to like the 30-second bar. And I was like, what is happening? But it was really great to like focus on that linear kind of stuff, because I feel like it really translates into, like, right now my main gig is rock and roll. But I feel like it still all translates. Like if you can independently control your limbs, then when you play them all together, it's even better.
Point well taken. That's great wisdom for sure. So you listening to these artists, were there any books that you were going through specifically when you were learning?
Yeah, we did Stick Control, of course, Advanced Funk Studies, Syncopation, and then a bunch of just like random transcriptions. And my teacher was amazing. He would go through and find all these similarities between different drummers, and then we'd have like, this is the New Orleans influenced funk groove section. This is the Latin inspired funk groove section. So it was kind of like learning based on feels, which was really helpful for me. Like we didn't really do a lot of like learning of fills or anything like that. And I'm a big fan of like Mark Juliana's approach of kind of like learning the basics and then getting really comfortable with them so that you can just speak through your instrument rather than learning fills. Although I think there's value to that too. I've just never been that person since I didn't really read music. It was not the thing. So yeah, that's kind of how I went about it.
Well, good for you. I've known Mark very well. I knew Mark when he was 14, and Mark
Nice.
is another dedicated player. So you're allowing these great influences to step into your world and be affected by them, which is fantastic. Were there bands that you started playing with around this high school time? Were you jamming with friends?
Yeah, we my first band was called the Bandits, which was a great name. But it was just a three-piece, and we played like Paramore songs and pop punk kind of stuff, like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. And that was the first time I kind of tried singing and playing, and it did not go well. My voice took a while to really develop, I think. But that was kind of the first time I experimented with that. And then in college, I started my first serious band called Trackless, and we stayed together all the way up until a few years ago. We moved out to LA together. So that was the band where I really, kind of started writing music and really singing and learning how the band thing really works.
So how did the singing part? So you're playing with your friends. Were you doing cover tunes? Were you original stuff? What were you doing with that band?
Well, I was in a songwriting class in college, and we had to write 2 songs a week and then fully produce them. And I did not know how to use Pro Tools. So I just got a bunch of friends that knew how to play, and then I made them like pull all-nighters with me like every week. And we would just sit and record, and they would show me how to like mic stuff and how to use Pro Tools, and then we'd turn the songs in. And so after like a semester, I had like 25 songs or something ridiculous, and I got called like I hadn't announced the band. The band wasn't really a thing yet. But somehow someone thought I had a band. And so they were like, we'll pay you this much money to come to Chicago and do a thing. And so I just said yes. And then we started learning all the songs. I hired another girl to sing. But then she was like, it wasn't working. So the day before our first gig, I just fired her and sang all the songs.
So
So.
where does singing come from? Where did that ability to be able to sing and develop that talent?
I mean, I always sang in choir, like at church or, for like stuff around school. But I never sang by myself. Really, when I fired that singer and then had to play the next day, that was kind of the first time I sang a solo part in front of people.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was like a choice.
Well, you fired the singer. What did it feel, first of all, being a leader and having to fire someone? How did that feel?
Not great. I was like 20, and I didn't really, it felt really uncomfortable, and I felt like I always want to empower other women. So it also felt weird to like let go of the only other woman in my band. But she just wasn't showing up to stuff, so kind of just had to do it. But it was kind of, once it started happening and after that first gig, then it just felt very natural to be like, okay, this is like what we're going to do, and let's just do it.
So where do you think the leadership skill came in? I mean, this is, you had to put your big girl pants on this, to kind of realize that this is not working and I want something more out of you. You can't deliver it. This is like, now you need the courage and the confidence to go there and say, listen, good talking to you.
I think part of it's like when you're younger, I do think you're a little more, I was like kind of arrogant, and that gave me a false sense of confidence that kind of like got me started maybe in the wrong direction, but it still made me do things. But then as I've gotten older, I think my mom is a principal. And so I think it kind of was shown to me at an early age, like that being a leader is okay, and that you can do it, and that there's good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. So my mom also gave me a lot of advice as I was growing up, and like, being a good leader or a bad leader. And so I think I just had a good role model. All the women in my family are pretty strong. So.
Boy, what a great, this is so great for people to hear that this is the strength that you were given as a child to see the responsibility and the courage that it takes to be a leader and be a strong woman in a male business is really what it came down to at that point. It's slowly changing and evolving.
Yeah.
There are many great female drummers and musicians that are entering the music scene more and more, which is so exciting to see.
Yeah, it is.
Now you mentioned you put this band together. You're playing. The entire band made the move out to LA from Indiana.
Uh, kind of. So we ended up, we were playing in Fort Wayne here, where I'm actually currently at, my hometown. Played at a really big dive bar called Brass Rail, which is super fun. It's kind of a motorcycle hang. And one night we were playing there, and Bob Clearmountain, who is an excellent, amazing, legendary mixer who did like the Rolling Stones and Bruce Springsteen, he was there, and he told us, hey, you guys should move to LA. And it was the most random thing in my life. But I told the band, like, we should totally do that. So 3 of us went, and the other 2 stayed back. So the 3 of us went out to LA together, and it was me, the other singer, because we always sang a duet style, and the keyboard player. We went out together and kind of tried to make it happen. We ended up recording with Bob, and it was great. The band ultimately didn't work out, but everyone in the band is successful in their own right, and we still talk all the time.
So that experience of making the move, how old were you at the time?
I was 25.
So and you were in college? You had just gotten out of college at the time?
Had left college like a year and a half before that, because I stayed in college for a while. But had, left, and we were playing regionally in that year and a half while I was saving money to make the move out.
Okay.
And then when we did move, I would say it was terrifying, because really we only knew Bob. That was the only person we knew. It was like, I mean, he's a great person to know, but it's the only person. So.
We only knew Bob. Boy, there's that song title there if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, only knew Bob. But and he was great. He would invite us to Apogee, which his wife Betty owns, and they have a studio there. So we'd go to events and meet other bands, and it kind of really got the ball rolling on just getting into LA, and because LA is very daunting and crazy.
And it's huge, not only in just the intensity of between the music industry and the Hollywood industry, but also it's just a landmass. You got to drive around and get around. It's not like in New York, where I'm from. Here, I live on Long Island. In New York, it's a quick walk or a taxi cab, but you're at the other side of New York. So it's really easy to get around and see things. LA is a different beast the way it is. Fantastic being out there. So how did you adapt to the LA scene?
I just tried to go out and do as much as possible and go to jam sessions where I was the worst one. That was always my goal, was to be the worst in the room. And that, happened a lot. It still happens a lot, which is another great thing, a very humbling thing about a city like LA or New York or anywhere where there's a lot of people. I just wanted to be surrounded by people that were doing what I wanted to do next. So we just kind of kept going places, and we would play shows anywhere we could and work with whoever we thought was cool. And we just did that for a long time.
How long have you been out in LA now?
Well, aside from COVID, because I've been living in Fort Wayne for the last year during COVID, but we lived there for like 5.5 years before coming back here, and then I'm going back to LA on Friday, so I'm excited for that.
So multi-instruments. So where did that come from? Playing guitar. Where did that all come from? You said you played some piano years ago.
Yeah, the multi-instrumental stuff really also was kind of out of necessity. I feel like a lot of the things I do are just because I couldn't find someone else to do it. When we moved to LA, our guitar player did not come with us. And so that was a big bummer, but I just decided I would play his parts. So I learned, chords and stuff on guitar just so that I could get by. And then I started working for Roland and doing a bunch of clinics and like a bunch of workshops for Roland, just as a freelancer. And it would always just be me flying around to these guitar centers or Sweetwater or wherever and kind of demoing all these products. And I always just got bored with just playing drums. So I would always loop a guitar and then start singing and play drums just to put it in a more practical application. And so I just started playing synth and guitar. And if you're at the trade show for 8 hours and you have every instrument, you kind of just play all the instruments.
So how did the Roland relationship start?
That's another Bob, different Bob, but another Bob. So all the Bobs in my life are great. But when I when I graduated from college, I went to work at Sweetwater because it's located in my hometown. And I was like, I worked at the retail store, and I would play on the weekends with all the people that worked there because there's a lot of great players there. And one of the guys was named Bob Bailey, and at the time he was like the president or something of Boss in LA. But he would fly back and forth, but worked at Sweetwater. I don't really know how it worked, but when I was moving to LA, he introduced me to Roland, and I took a meeting with them, and then I started contracting for them. And then after 2 years of that, I went full time with them, and I was doing like R&D and developing products with them. I went to Japan a few times. And then I went into artist relations, and then I quit to go on tour. And I don't know, I still do some work for them. It's been a kind of crazy situation, but it's been fun.
Well, it sounds like it's interesting at many levels that you get a chance to kind of step into the industry, the backstage of the industry and how it works,
Yeah.
manufacturing part, but you're still on stage performing. So that's a very, very helpful balance to understand the gear really well.
Oh, yeah.
Understand it and demo it and then go out on stage and use it.
Yeah, well, I was like huge against electronics. I hated electronics. Like when I worked at Sweetwater, I would not sell anyone an electronic kit. I would make them buy like a Ludwig or a DW. I would be like, no, you don't want this. And it was just kind of funny because then I started working at Roland, and I was like, well, this is actually pretty cool. And like all the triggers and the sampling and like all the capabilities of technology are like make your playing even more musical if you want it to be. Yeah, that's my that's one of the setups I used with an artist named Kaylee Morg. And so I have so many electronics. I'm triggering the kick and a snare that you can't see in the background, and then everything else is on those two SPDs, including the tracks and all of the like, I mean, I was playing like bass samples, guitar samples, like note for note, like almost like using those as a keyboard, and then playing the actual keyboard on the other side.
If you would, Chad, the producer, Chad Brandolini, Brad, pull that picture back up again. So I want you to explain this here. So you got the two pads to your right, which you're triggering what through there?
So the pad on the far right was all of her tracks. So I had her track on one, and then the click track going into my ears on the other pad, and I had them like simultaneously triggering. And that was cool. And then the one next to that, to the left, that had all of the like playing samples. So whether it was like drum sounds or like there was like a marimba part I played, and I would put all the notes on different pads. So I had a bunch of different kits on there. And then coming out of that pad, there's two triggers. So there's one to my kick and one to my snare. So I'd kind of layer in samples on the kick and snare. And then there's a hi-hat that you can't, that's invisible. And then the keyboard on the left, I just played some acoustic kind of songs for her on there. Or like I would do the first half on piano, then switch over and play drums or something.
So acoustically, there was only a bass drum in that picture. Did you have a snare and a hi-hat also? Was that?
Yeah.
Not?
I also had a snare and a hi-hat. And then eventually we added other drums too. But that was kind of my original setup with her.
This really had kind of a hybrid. So this artist that you're talking about, when you went out there, you had to rehearse and work on all this stuff here too. What was that like when you went out? Because you have to have a certain mix now in either your ear set or your headphones or your monitor mix. How did that come into mixing acoustic and electronic?
That was interesting because with her, she was a new artist, a really young artist, and she didn't have like a monitor guy or a front of house or anything like that. So it was kind of a skeleton crew, and getting to be able to hear everything was kind of a challenge, but we did figure it out. We ended up routing everything through my interface, and I used Ableton to trigger the tracks eventually. And that way I had a pack with my in-ears so I could hear the mix of everything that was coming to the front of house.
So you were able to change the volume of what you heard from your in-ear monitor to be able to hear what was happening.
Yeah, on my interface, yeah.
Yeah. So you had to find that, but it's great that you found a way to make that work. It's always challenging on the road. Nothing is always as ideal as people think.
No.
But we got to go and make it happen and make it sound like nothing is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it always works out.
Yeah, it sure does. It sure. Well, it always works out if you have the kind of positive attitude that you have, that you roll with the punches, so to speak.
Yeah, that's why you got to play like 5 instruments. You just move to the different, move to the one that's working, leave the other one behind.
I love it. Let's talk about songwriting for a while. When you write songs, which you've done very prolifically, are you writing it from any particular place? Do you write it from guitar, keyboard, drums? How do you?
I really like to write from guitar, and then sometimes piano. I like to have the chords first, and then the melody, and then I actually do the drums last, usually. And the words are like even after that.
Where does this inspiration come from?
I feel like it's changed over the years. When I first started writing, it was just like, what words sound good together? Like nothing really meant much of anything. It was kind of a lot of cliches, just like finding things that fit the syllables. And then as I've gotten older, a lot of what I write is very like a personal experience stuff. Like I don't write a lot of like stories. Like I love listening to songs that are like very storyteller type, like Taylor Swift's like folklore record. I love the creativity of that, but all mine are very like, here's how I feel and this is why. And it's just like a pretty straightforward emotional songs.
Yeah, but it's you. I mean, so this is what you're capturing. You're taking you're wearing your heart on your sleeve, as they say. You're just starting to share some inner feelings, which is fantastic. So where do the lyrics come in? How does that kind of shape into the whole thing?
Those are usually last, unless I have sometimes you sit down with a guitar and then words just like come out that fit and make sense. I would say that happens like 1% of the time. All the other times I sing like gibberish with just sounds, and then I phonetically match certain words that kind of are unique and cool, and then I fill the rest in with stuff that I'm feeling. So it's kind of a mix of like finding the most pleasing sound just based on the sound of it, and then finding the best word to convey like what I'm trying to say.
How deep do you dig into your soul for some of this?
Pretty deep. I'm a pretty, I'm a sensitive person. A lot of my songs, I have like anxiety and stuff. So I think a lot of my songs kind of play on that and kind of saying like, what I'm feeling when I'm going through like feeling anxious or being, like self-doubt or anything like that everyone I think deals with, but I feel on a very deep level. So I think to me, they feel very deep, but if you listen to them, they might sound more like universal or, whatever. I don't know. I don't know what people think, but it's just like, to me, it's exactly how I'm feeling.
Boy, it's that story line that I think is so powerful. I had the chance of knowing Harry Chapin, the late great Harry Chapin, many, many years ago. I was taking lessons with Jim Chapin, the famous jazz drummer, who wrote a very famous jazz independence book. I was studying with Jim here on Long Island, and Harry Chapin lived in Huntington, Long Island. I had the chance of meeting Harry and seeing Harry in his prolific ways of writing Cats in the Cradle and his songs Taxi. He really talked about, he would say to me, he really had to dig deep and go into his soul. And he said, like the more challenging his emotions were, the more lyrics and the better the songs came out. So it was really good.
Yeah. If you cry while you're writing the song, it's probably good. That's my take. I mean, I also don't consider myself a great lyricist, but I do know that hard things are the best things. Like if it's hard to say, it's definitely something you should say. But it's a little terrifying to release music sometimes, for that reason.
Yeah, then you have to find out how to say it, and every time you perform it, you bring all that emotion back up again.
Yeah, that's what I don't like. I play with Grace Potter, and I feel like she does that so well, and it feels so raw that I'm always like, is she okay? Like after the show, I'm like, oh my God, you all right? But it's like she says, it's like a therapy session. And I think like many of us kind of feel the same, is like, it feels really good to just be in the moment. And then, someone in the audience can relate to what you're saying. And you can feel that kind of connection Oh yeah, there's us on our tour before the world stopped.
Well, let's talk about Grace Potter. How'd that come up to hooking up with the band and meeting with her?
So that was actually, I got referred to. So Grace is married to Eric Valentine, who's a great producer and a drummer too. Actually, he's a multi-instrumentalist as well. But he knows Tony Berg, who I met through Bob Clearmountain, original Bob. I met him like when I came out to LA in 2015. Tony was one of the first people that Bob introduced me to. And I guess 4 years later, Eric was like, hey, our drummer that we've had is moving on to a different gig. We need a drummer that can sing. And so Tony referred me to Eric, and I met Eric and Grace and did like a little, we got together and played the songs, and they showed me the new record at the time, which was Daylight, which she got nominated for 2 Grammys on. And I thought it was amazing. And so I just started playing with them, and we did a lot of dates in 2019, and 2020 was going to be a big year. I think it still was. But yeah, so we just kind of hit it super hard, and I had a great time. We played all kinds of amazing shows. And she is really like a powerhouse. Everyone on that stage is a great musician.
Boy, that is so interesting. Jordan, we have people from Italy, from Brazil, from all throughout the U.S. that are listening to us live right now. And I think what's interesting is that your reach now, with what you're doing, specifically with Grace Potter, is kind of interesting. So, what is it like playing with someone like Grace Potter, who is able to dig out these emotions on each time? But now you're a side man. You're kind of supporting that, as opposed to being the front person you are when you're doing your stuff. So, how do you balance that? How do you fit into that?
I love that. I sometimes really prefer that. I love to just focus on playing the drums. I think when it's my own stuff, it's really there's a lot more kind of going on, because singing lead feels very different than singing backups. Because when you're lead, it's like
It's you.
that's what's happening.
Doing
Yeah.
it.
But when you're singing backups, it's like you're with me and the keyboard player, Eliza. She's an excellent singer as well. And we kind of are always together. So it's never like one of us is out, off to sea alone.
Yeah.
So I kind of like having that support. And I love being able to just like rock out on the drums, because I don't sing the whole time. So I get to just focus on the first thing that I loved, which is drums. And the thing I think, if I had to choose like what I feel like I'm the best at, drums is it. So I think it's nice to be able to just focus on being a player and not being like what everyone's looking at all the time.
Yeah, it sure is a different responsibility. I mean,
Yeah.
when you had that, but I mean, you've done many different things with Grace. So what's it like touring now? So the band will probably get back now, as the pandemic kind of changes and people are starting to get back into live music, that tour will probably start back in action.
Yeah, we did a lot of dates in September. We actually went out to her new spot in Vermont, and we recorded a little bit, and we were going to play Bonnaroo, but it got canceled. But we did play some festivals, and we played some shows in Vermont, and it was just super fun. So the whole month of September, we kind of got to be back together and doing the thing, and it felt really awesome. I'm sure every musician that's been on hiatus and then had those first shows back, it just feels like amazing to be able to do that with people that you love, and like the audiences are so ready. Everyone is so ready for like the return of music, including me.
Everybody is on the edge of their seat waiting for this chance to be able to get out and go out and hear some live music, which is fantastic. So going back to the drumming stuff, you got involved with looping, and you're able to put these loops together. How did that all come about?
That was just a thing of like being at those trade shows when I worked for Roland, and just sitting there with that looper like all day, just all day by myself. Like, what am I going to do? And I was fascinated by it the first time that I messed around with it. I was just like blown away by everything that it could do.
Yeah.
And the more I had it, the more I started doing weird stuff. And I started just like putting one mic and then looping my acoustic drums through a mic and putting delay and reverb and pitch shifting. And it's like a very fun and a very inspiring tool, and something that makes songwriting like pretty easy. Like I really like writing with the looper, because it's like a lot of times I can't play, like I'm not a great guitarist, so I can't really play an idea and sing. Like I can play and sing if it's drums, but if it's guitar, it's like, this is not working. Unless it's like chords, but if it's like a line, it's nice to be able to loop it and then play things over it, and you feel like you're writing to a demo as opposed to just writing to my, like, crappy strumming.
I understand totally well. So in the process of this here, you had to kind of like just experiment with all this looping stuff. I mean, you just started just trying things out.
Yeah, you just kind of press buttons and see what happens when you press the buttons, and I feel like that's kind of like that's always been my favorite way to learn stuff, is just get thrown into a situation and then be like, "Okay, well, here you go." Just figure it out, 'cause then there's no, like, preset expectation, there's no rules, there's no like, I love it too when there's no gig, there's just you just have a piece of gear that's inspiring and you just wanna have fun and play with it. I really, like, love learning in that way.
Well, what would you say, from a drumming standpoint? I mean, yeah, I've been playing drums for professionally since the age of 12. That's 56 years of being on this instrument. And it really has, and I'm still learning, still discovering. You as a drummer, specifically as a drummer, and the singing and the writing, all that is absolutely fantastic. But your drumming is just so in the pocket and so comfortable and so natural. That seems to be a lot of where your heart and your core really is at.
Yeah, and that's what I feel too, like, when I play, and that's why I love being a side person and playing for people and playing with all these artists that are I love when people can focus on what they are truly, like, called to do, and that's why, like, with Grace sings, I don't wanna sing. I just let her sing because that's her thing, and that's how I feel about drums, like, it just is the way, like, our brains work as drummers. It's something about it that speaks to how we interpret the world, and it's very meditative, and it's very, freeing, I think, to be playing a pattern, over and over again. Like, I love pocket drumming because you're just in that kind of zone, and I think that really resonates with my brain. Like, I just love repetition, and I love, like, rhythm, and I think that's always been something that it's my favorite part of music is the rhythm of everything.
Well, repetition and rhythm, you're already there. I mean, that's one thing about this instrument. Once you lock into that pocket and you just create the machine to move forward and make it feel good, that's what connects people. And that we speak about pocket drumming or being in the pocket or in the groove. That's really what that does. It allows the groove that we're playing to communicate with an audience and bring everybody into the same place, together at that one point. So you do that well. What advice would you give to a drummer that's starting out today that wants to get into playing, or maybe playing and writing and singing? What kind of advice would you give to this next generation?
I mean, my biggest thing is that you should always be having fun, and you should always be pushing yourself to try different things and not worrying about if it sounds good or bad or whatever. I think, like, Instagram and social media, I'm really glad, like, that didn't come about till I was, like, out of high school, because I think it's easy to get caught in, like, "Wow, this kid's 12 and they sound incredible." But, I think it's just, like, don't be afraid to go for it and do something you're bad at, because 'cause you're bad at everything that you've never done before. So I think, just have fun, always have fun, um, and listen to music that makes you excited and inspired to play, and don't listen to, like, what people think is cool. Just listen to, like, I listened to Kelly Clarkson and Cher, and all my friends thought I was lame, but I still love them very much. So I think you just have to listen and play along to the music that you can see yourself in and that really speaks to you, and don't worry about anything else. Just have fun and play what you like.
Good for you. Great advice. So, is there anything that you're practicing currently, drumming wise? Is there like a practice routine that you have or a warm up that you go through?
It's been a little weird during COVID because I live in, like, a one-bedroom apartment, and my drums are all here at my parents' house, in my old bedroom. So that's been an interesting adjustment, an interesting COVID adjustment. But what I've been kinda doing is I will take my looper, and I will just, like, loop a groove, and then I'll just kind of vibe out on that for, like, however long, like an hour, 2 hours, doesn't matter. I'm just kind of I'll sometimes practice rudiments to whatever I loop. I'll sometimes try to do a solo. I'll sometimes try to write a song and sing and play and improvise. I kind of, right now, I'm just doing whatever is fun and whatever I want to do, as opposed to practicing. Like, I used to practice the rudiments on the pad a lot, and I'll probably get back to doing that as things are opening up again. But for COVID reasons, it's like, I just want to be happy. So I'm just kind of playing stuff that I'm having a good time playing to keep me moving and to keep me inspired.
Well, fantastic. But Jordan, you really have a wonderful attitude and a healthy, forward-thinking passion that I think is beautiful to experience.
Thank you.
PASIC, the Percussive Arts Society International Convention. You're going to be there.
Yep.
I'm going to be there, so I look forward to meeting you there in person.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to, so what are you going to do? Do you have any, without sharing anything, in depth of it, do you have any plans of what you're going to do to share this year at PASIC?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I've been working on lately too, is just figuring out how to showcase what I want to showcase. But the general theme of what I would like to talk about is sort of like embracing musicality as a drummer and not just being a drummer. And I know that's like a lame phrase, to not just be a drummer, but I think people give drummers kind of a bad rep of just like, oh yeah, you just like sit there and it's easy, you just play stuff. But I think embracing like your full musicality, whether it's like learning another instrument or trying to sing, it adds value to you as someone to be hired, but it also adds value to you as a musician and your ability to express yourself. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and like looping and how that kind of plays into it. And then I'm going to talk about utilizing technology and sort of creating a new way of thinking about drums that I think like people are wanting when they're hiring people. They want someone that understands how to use samples and how to use triggers and how to bring more to the table and produce more sound from one person. So I'm going to kind of talk about being versatile and being musical and how I think you can achieve it.
I love it. I love it. Well, this will be very, very exciting to hear that. So tell me about your Vater Classic 5As. You love the stick in your hand, you feel it. What is it about the stick that just works for you?
I mean, I used to play 7As. So I used to play, when I played jazz a lot, I played a thinner stick, but when I got the gig with Grace, I was just breaking sticks, and also it wasn't loud enough. And Eric was kind of MDing us at the time, and he was like, you really need to play loud. And I was like, I spent my entire college time playing being told to play quieter because I was playing jazz. And so I always wanted to bash, but it was like not the vibe. So I kind of had to beef up my sound a little bit. And so these helped me do that. And they never these sticks have been played pretty much like for the last 4 months, and they're not broken. They're not even really chipped. So I just love how long they last. Like on tour, I use the same pair for like 5 shows, which is crazy. But yeah, I just love them. They're really balanced. They feel great. They don't feel chunky, but they definitely help me play a little louder. So that's my pick.
You're playing the hickory model, but they're also available in maple, the sugar maple, which is nice too. I played those. They feel so great. What Vater does is the stick is made so well. It's balanced so well. This is a master, stick manufacturer that really knows his craft so well and has made sticks for everybody in the industry. So, I mean, he knows totally what he's doing. So it's so exciting to see. One last question. Your bucket list. Who do you think you'd like to play with if you had the chance that you'd want to go out on tour with?
Oh, man. My bucket list. It's so long.
I hear you.
I don't know. I feel like if like my internal child would like die if I played with Kelly Clarkson, because I sincerely love her so much.
Nice.
I actually played her stunt double one time on a commercial. I got to meet her. But I feel like she is like a bucket list artist. But really, and I love major like pop. I love ultra pop, and I think it would be fun to play with any of the big, pop stars, just because the grooves are so like heavy and super pocket. Yeah. Giant crew. It'd be really fun. But I also love the gig I have. So
well, Grace Potter's gig is fantastic. She's a wonderful person. You guys blend so well. It really is a great performance that happens, and there's dynamics, and there's really everything is there with the emotion of what's happening. So you're in a great position. I look forward to having you on the road sooner than later. I look forward to in November seeing you at PASIC. Anyone that is listening right now, if you go and visit PASIC, go to pas.org, pas.org, and all the information to the dates of what's happening there. So come on by and see Jordan there. Jordan, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for hanging out with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been really fun.
Thank you to Vater. This is fantastic. And I look forward to seeing you next month in November. Have fun, be safe, and I'll see you real soon.
All right, sounds good. Bye.
Bye-bye. Boy, how fantastic to have this incredible young talent like Jordan West to share what she does. Now, listen, you've all, kind of, my gosh, I've got people from all around the world that have joined us in here, so thank you so much. When you watch this again, look at it, listen to what she's saying, share this with your friends, spread the word. Thank you so much to Vater Percussion for allowing me to have this opportunity with so many great young artists. And Chad Brandolini, my producer on this event, who's an incredible artist relations specialist for the Vater Company, who just is a fantastic player himself in what he does. So thank you all so much. I'll see you in our next event. Stay well, wash your hands, and stay safe. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.